what you say in your book as well. Like, you're not letting children fall. You're not letting them cry. You're not really building resilience at all in this generation.
Why are we so involved in our children's lives? Why do we want to structure every moment of their day? We don't let them daydream. And interestingly, we don't let them get bored. Boredom is good. Daydreaming is even better.
I'm going to say something which is not popular because there is this huge flux of everybody suddenly going for therapy. Everyone does not, I do not believe everyone needs therapy. Everyone needs support of some kind, but we are in such a digitized time that we are only thinking that therapy is the only form of support.
Majority of the country, because of the cultural setting, has not been allowed to think for itself, and then to tell people in their mid-30s that, hey, like, now you've produced a human being, you're looking after it, you need to have this self-confidence and the maturity to know when to let go and when to step away. This person has no idea.
And the moment you start like seeing from that lens, you start giving space to the fact that, okay, they don't want you in their space right now. They don't need you right now. They need to, like, just vent. Maybe you want them to go to a ballet class, but they hate it. And that's fine. You shouldn't be trying to live out your unfulfilled, I don't know, dreams.
Allow their personhood to emerge.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to Unparent, a podcast where we navigate modern parenting challenges. And this is episode 1, guys.
Yeah, we finally did it. We finally
did it. And our guest, I think I'm really excited for today's guest, Mrs. Abha Adams. So I just want to name drop right at the start. But before that, I think we should kind of like introduce ourselves.
Okay, start.
I'm Nanki Oberoi. I'm a chartered clinical psychologist. I'm a child and adolescent psychotherapist by practice. And I'm happy to be here because it gets me to work with my friends and also help them a little bit, hopefully.
And you're also the credibility to this podcast. I mean, like, otherwise it's just me and Ravneet, like...
Basically, it's our phone call on video.
A WhatsApp chat.
Basically,
like,
yeah.
Only because I'm qualified, and we also have a group where we keep exchanging Instagram reels which are not based on the Indian context. So hopefully I will bring some of that into conversation.
In-house expert. Let's just call her.
Yeah, she didn't want it, but it's okay.
Okay, Ravneet.
Okay, so hi, I'm Ravneet Kaur Sethi. I have worked in fashion for the last 13 years, and now I work as a brand consultant. I help them tell their stories in the way that they want to. And I'm doing this podcast because I wanted the chat to leave. I needed the chat to come out of WhatsApp, and I wanted this to be more than a phone conversation. But I think that mostly I just wanted to contextualize parenting in the Indian narrative. I wanted to bring some context to all our thoughts and feelings, and we have many of those. I wanted to bring some context to the way we're feeling in the surroundings that make sense to us, and not us trying to figure out something that's happening in the Western world and then trying to give it context ourselves. And also, honestly, I would just really wanted a space where we could have a conversation which was validated. Honestly, we've got Nanki here for validation, which was validated by experts. And of course, we're very lucky to have, such incredible guests coming in the episodes ahead. And we're starting off with Mrs. Adams. And we're still actually pinching ourselves that she said yes to come and have this conversation with us. So we hope you enjoy the season that is coming ahead.
Okay, and I'm Gayeti, and I'm a journalist, but I think I've also suffered a series of existential crises on what is my role beyond being a mom, very honestly. Like, every day I'm like, okay, what's my purpose beyond motherhood? And I think this podcast has just been, it's just come at the right time. It's just fed into my existential crisis nicely, like, maybe being a mom is what I need to be doing at this point in my life, and maybe that's okay. Maybe that's what it is. So yeah, for me, it's like a self-introspective little journey.
And there's nothing wrong with that. Good for you for making it happen for yourself.
Yeah, she's the one who's actually pretty much made it happen.
She's the enabler. You and I would have just kept chatting.
But that's my role in life in any case, guys. I am the enabler. Like, that's just who I am. But before we keep talking, because we all have this tendency, let's get into the convo with our guest.
Yes. So we have here Mrs. Abha Adams. Very happy to have you here. Thank you for agreeing to be part of this conversation. While Mrs. Abha Adams does not need an introduction, I will try my best. She is known for her work in education. She has worked across some of the best-known Delhi schools, including Shri and Step by Step. The reason we have her here today to kickstart our first season for our podcast is that she wrote a book, or she published a book 2 years ago called Parenting in the Age of Anxiety. And with that, I would like to actually turn towards her and ask her, how did she think of this title?
Oh, confession time. Not my idea.
Oh,
Yep. Cannot take credit for it. I had about 24 options. Um, and it was the commissioning editor, Mr. David Davidar, who said, scrubbed them all out and said, no, parenting in the age of anxiety. But he also added this byline, raising children in India in the 21st century. Because we've got plenty of information about how to parent. And in fact, parenting in the age of anxiety, there are 2 other books with different authors.
Oh,
And
didn't know
so
that.
therefore the byline that this is contextual to India and what we're going through here now.
I think that's so meaningful because you come into this book and all of what you've written in the book is from your experience as an educator. And as I said during our conversation, that I think it is all the more meaningful to write a book on parenting in the age of anxiety as an educator and not as a mental health practitioner. So, yeah, anything on that?
I wrote it with the perspective of an educator, yes, but I also wrote it from the perspective of a mother. And this book gave me the opportunity to take a look at how I'd been parented. You never really think about that, right?
Sure.
And how I was parenting my son, and the kind of moments when I thought I would go absolutely stark raving mad. The guilt, the sense of failure as a parent and as a working mother, attributing all kinds of consequences to my having worked all my life, and seeing parents around me. It was like 3 different generational vignettes,
Very
you know,
interesting.
different landscapes. And so I was able to then make comparisons between how I was parented and how my son was being parented by me, and then seeing how all of it, all the, let's say, the guilt, the anxiety, the worry that I always had, has now become an obsessive anxiety full time.
And we're in the thick of it. I mean, Ravneet and I, as mothers, I think your book was so relatable. Like, I literally, every paragraph, I was like, I agree with that. I agree with that. This is an insight, underline, like, star. And I think in the introduction itself, you say that the last decade has been the hardest for parents, educators, and children alike. And I know you go into it in the book, but just why? Why is the last decade? Because we're moms in this decade. And I know my mom always says that you're overthinking. It was not this difficult for us. Like, we didn't overthink to this degree. And I constantly get that from her. She laughs at my schedules and like the kids have to nap at this time and eat at this time. And she's just like, let them be kids. So why do you say that in the book? Like, why is it the hardest decade?
Okay. So when I was asked to write the book, I didn't know what it was going to be about. And they said, just think about the 30 years or more that you've spent in education and what's changed. And when I thought about it, I realized that everything about our lives had changed. Our family structures had changed. The way we lived had changed. Our relationships had changed. The relationships between school and parents had changed. Schools are seen as service providers. Parents are being seen as clients. And that is a terrible shift. And I sense that nothing was ever going to be the same again. So why had this happened? And when I thought more deeply, and it took me 3 months, I realized that there were several factors. Consumerism is one huge factor with the opening up of the economic situation in the country. The commercialization of every aspect of our lives. Whether you are planning to have a baby, have had a baby is growing up, the whole activities industry, the preschool industry, the going to school industry, the board industry, name it.
So I
Yes.
completely agree.
The birthday party. I mean, it's
And the return gifts.
and the return gifts. It's all there. I mean, there was a return gift of Apple Watches. Would you believe? However,
I wish I was invited.
I won't go down that rabbit hole. But so everything had changed, and nothing was going to be the same again. And what this was doing was that it was just creating more and more anxiety, because there was the aspiration that parents had have never been as high. And not just for themselves, but also for their children. The aspirations are not just academic. The aspirations are, my life has to be perfect. And where did that come from? Smartphones came to India around about 2008, 2009. Instagram followed
Yeah.
in 2010, 11.
Yeah.
Snapchat around that time. And through social media, what we are being given is a stencil of perfection that is our dream,
True.
An ideal.
an ideal. And if you're not that, then you're nothing. You're just not good enough. So if I'm not tall enough, skinny enough, fair enough, with hair long enough, if I'm not doing well at school, if I'm not an all-rounder, parents want this for their children, parents want this for themselves, and it drives you into a space where you can never be satisfied, because you're always working towards an unknown future and you're never in the present.
That's
And-
so true.
I know that, I was there. I was part of that. I was constantly worrying about my son and what is he going to do in life? I speak to parents who enter school and they're in nursery, kindergarten, or take admission, class 1, whatever. And their first question to me sometimes as an institutional head or educator has been, we're worried about the boards.
Oh my God.
12 years to go. And the worry of what's going to be the outcome. So this worry, this anxiety, this not being present, this aspiration to be perfect, I think that's been the death knell of our lives. We are human. We cannot be perfect. What you see on Instagram is a mirage. And we have devolved our sense of self, our decision-making capabilities to this algorithm.
So true.
So unless the algorithm tells us, validates us through whatever blue ticks, etc., we don't feel we've made it. And that can be soul destroying, both for parents and for children who are on this hamster on a wheel to nowhere. Now, I don't know if I've answered your question or I've gone down a rabbit hole.
But I have a question stemming from this. So, talking about what Gayeti says, that our parents do tell us that, okay, you guys are very, not just overbearing, you're very hyper parents. You're overthinking all of it, Like, I had a formula maker for my son. And my dad just looked at me and he was like, what is going on? I said, no, but if I'm making it at 2 a.m., it won't be too hot, it won't be too cold, it'll be the right temperature, it's not stressful. And he just looked at me, he was like, I think that everybody needs to calm down, But here's the difference. Here's my question. I don't know how to learn enough from not the older generations. That's not what I mean. I don't know how to contextualize what I'm learning, because the way the internet has blown up, not just Instagram but tech also, right? So as a new parent, as a young parent, the way the internet has completely transformed our lives, the way technology has completely transformed our lives, it's made a lot about parenting a lot easier also. But also now we have cameras. Like, I had an argument with a friend the other day because she wanted to put a camera in the car because her child was going with the driver and the nanny while she was at work for a class in the car, and she said, I need to put a camera in the car. I said, look here, you are setting yourself up
That's
for a
nuts.
complete breakdown. You're going to lose it if you're going to keep checking the car and every second what your child is doing. Either you find a way to trust the people your child is with, or you don't do this, because this is not good for your mental health. And I had a full blown argument. I said, you absolutely can't do this to yourself. It's bad enough that we have it in their nurseries till now.
It's also not good for the child's mental health.
Yeah, so see.
I told you guys, right? My
Yes.
daughter
Yeah,
switches off the
yeah.
camera in her room.
Yeah.
And then she does what she thinks is, something would be frowned upon. She throws her toys around.
She's
or
clearly
like-
telling you you're being intrusive.
Yeah.
You know,
and
it's
she's 4.
Big Brother is watching you.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Oh my God.
It's a lot. It's a
But
lot.
this is not Big Brother. These are your
Yeah.
parents. So, we've got to have the confidence as parents in our own intuition and in our own decision-making abilities.
Yeah.
That I know that this is a good way to parent. Parents don't believe in themselves anymore.
True.
So, as adults and as parents, our first step really is working on ourselves. I am good enough to be a parent. This is what I think good parenting looks like. It doesn't have to depend on cameras. It doesn't have to depend on 101 safeguards. I know the world has changed. It's scary. But fear does that to you.
True.
And if you let fear overwhelm your common sense, then you're on the start of a slippery slope where you end up as being neurotic. Sorry, that's a strong word.
No, it is.
But I think that's a
Wh-
very
when,
valid
when
point to
anxiety
make.
tends towards paranoia, that's how I
Yeah.
explained.
And that's what you see in your book as well. Like, you're not letting children fall. You're not letting them cry. You're not really building resilience at all in this generation.
Why are we so involved in our children's lives?
over involved. Thank
Just
you.
over.
Yes.
Why do we want to structure every moment of their day? We don't let them daydream. And interestingly, we don't let them get bored.
Yeah.
Boredom is good.
Yes.
Daydreaming is even better.
Yeah.
That's when your mind is at its most creative because it wanders. But our poor children's minds and brains, there's no breathing space because it's a schedule like a CEO.
Yeah.
Not that I know what a CEO schedule looks like.
No, it is. They
But-
have more, they're busier than
That's
we
right.
I call it
That's-
overscheduling.
are at 3 and 4.
It's overscheduling.
Over programming,
Absolutely.
over scheduling, and outsourcing that time when the child, children need to discover themselves. And that's why there's this big separation that they insist on when they're teenagers. And they cut themselves off. And if you have been a parent who is hovering all the time, that comes as I can't
Glow.
believe-
Yeah.
no. He's locked himself in his room. Yes, he has. She's turned the camera off. Yes,
That
she
she's doing it
has.
at 4.
And she's doing it at 4. She's trying to tell you something.
Yeah, I know.
I don't need a camera.
Yeah.
Trust me,
Yeah.
Yeah, I know.
right?
I
said the same thing to
I've gotten a lot better.
You have. I will
have.
give
No,
that.
but I think
You
there's
have.
something I want to say over here. And of course, when I was talking to Mrs. Adams 2 days ago, I said, your book spoke to the therapist in me about a lot of
And how interesting. It spoke to the parent in me.
Yeah. So that was one of the
Yeah.
compliments I gave to the book.
Yeah.
That it's I'm often as the child therapist in the room. I'm always, I want to say, over identifying, but identifying with the child and becoming the child's voice and telling parents that you need to regulate yourself. You need to reflect. I said it to a parent yesterday, and often that gets translated into. You're always on the side of the child. You don't think about. So you're blaming teachers, you're blaming schools, you're blaming the systems. But there's something that you've managed to do in this book, which is that you have somehow managed to communicate compassion to every stakeholder in the system: parents, teachers, therapists. I was going to say therapy centers, just everyone, which is marvelous. I mean, I don't know how you've done that because I struggle. I struggle to communicate that. But something emerged right now when when you both were speaking about, why are parents not feeling confident? I think there's something to think about over there. There has been a huge, especially in the last 5 years, huge boom in therapy and mental health becoming a buzzword, right? So all millennials who are now becoming parents or have become new parents are in a time when they are very, I would say again, overexposed to therapy speak, understanding a vocabulary which is new to them, and then using that to contextualize their own lives and minds, and then taking that into their parenting. And obviously, there will be no confidence there because everyone is, oh my God, I don't want to. I mean, all parents talk about it. I do not want to, and all well intentioned, I do not want to do to my children what happened to me if any of it has been traumatic. And I want to give the best to my child.
So that's where the problem lies. Trauma, suffering, rejection, dejection, failure, all part of life.
Absolutely.
I learned that, again, my son taught me how to parent. And I wanted to actually, I think I may have mentioned that in the book, as did my husband. But when we became neurotic as parents, he remained the adult and turned around and told us, and I'll give you the example of what happened, how childish, and walked out of the room at 14. So what happened was his room was in a mess. His father got really mad. 12, 14-year-olds, boys, girls. I don't know about girls so much because I've only had boys. They believe there is a clothes fairy that picks up all the clothes.
I think that continues into adulthood
Oh,
for a lot of
it
men.
really does.
Absolutely. And with men it continues.
It continues.
But then men take a longer time. So I don't know why my husband got so absolutely wild. I mean, this was a thing that always happened. So he said, this is outrageous. And he took a black bin bag, stuffed everything that was lying on the floor, took off all his football posters. Now, that's a line you cross, right?
Yeah.
Boundaries.
Boundaries. So
Yeah.
those were his most precious, treasured.
Of course.
He wasn't a kid that had lots of stuff, but posters, football, etc. Took those off, didn't tear them up, rolled them up, separate bin bag. So when my son came back from school, he walked in.
He was like,
The walls were bare, the floor was bare, of course, and there was nothing, and there were two bin bags lying there. And he just looked at his father and said, "You did this?" And Bill said, "Yes." He said, "How childish. You could have just told me."
oh my.
And so what was
That's
the...
amazing.
Yeah. So now the fact remains that having told him again and again...
Yeah, I was just going to say that of course he was told.
Yeah, of course he was told, but he never listened.
Yeah.
But he was able to bring this is a violent reaction.
Yeah.
Why did you react like this?
It was disproportionate.
It was disproportionate. And I also realized that when he was... this business of separation, I wasn't able to understand it. That he needed us at a distance. He needed his space. He refused a cell phone because he didn't want to be tracked.
Wow.
Right? Now we have the opposite issue.
Yeah.
Where
There's too much tracking.
that's too much tracking. So when we came back from the UK, he was just allowed, as I was allowed, to play in the defense colony gully.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right? And he was playing in the back park with
Yeah.
children of neighbors. They
Yeah.
introduced themselves. They were children of members of household staff. Everybody played together. He learned Hindi there.
Yeah.
I know there were gentler times and kinder times. And I was working. My husband was there. My mother was there. He was safe, happy, and he knew he was unconditionally loved.
Yes.
And I think that as parents, that's what we need to focus on. Let's not be so fearful. We pass our fear on to our children. Can you imagine what they're going to be like as parents?
I know. But I'll tell you where it stems from, because we're in that trap right now.
Yeah.
We're in that trap where, there are a multitude of things for the children to do post school. And my daughter is at 4 in school. She comes home at 3 p.m. So it's like a long day of school. And I still feel the pressure of like having to send her out for an after school activity.
Why?
No, I don't do it. I don't do it, but I feel the pressure
Why?
because everyone else is doing it.
So,
Everyone else is jumping
doing
into
it.
the well.
But you are your own person,
100%.
Gayeti.
So I don't do it. I resist the pressure. of
She
course,
is
but
very
that
good at
doesn't mean that I
resisting.
don't
But you
feel
acknowledge that
Yeah.
there is the
Acknowledge it.
pressure. Fair
And
enough.
why is it there? Because if you're working, which a lot of people are, or they're busy, and everyone is now living in like not the kind of extended joint family that they used to, there is guilt that the children are with the nannies. So the children shouldn't be with the nannies. Let's put them in a structured after school activity so that we can do what we need to do. And then by the time we come home, the child has come home from the activity. That's where the problem stems from. And I acknowledge it, and I'm lucky enough to be able to work part-time, so I'm home a lot. So
Right.
I don't have that guilt. I'm home when my kids are home. But I
Right.
can understand where people are operating from and why they're overscheduling their kids' lives, because there's that guilt, who are the kids with if not with us?
So we've developed ways to insulate them. We've given them gadgets. We've got play dates. We've got all kinds of things that are happening. Again, I don't know why. We have to overcome our fear.
We do.
And a group of like-minded moms could perhaps say, let's start evenings in the park. And if we are able to join, we will. If you're able to get dads on weekends to have a game of football with girls and boys, birthday parties, I mean, again, I'm going back, which is not to say that those were ideal times in any way, but they were all about activities.
Yeah.
So there were treasure hunts. And there was, without soccer, it wasn't.
I did it,
I
guys.
know.
And also pin the
I,
donkey.
I have
Pinning the
totally tried
donkey,
to
yeah.
I loved it.
Do a nostalgic
resist.
birthday.
I
Yes.
tried to resist the birthday party. I don't know what it is. I'm happy to send my children to them because they're like transported to a wonderful world, but it's not me. I can't do those birthday parties. So I still do the treasure hunts and like the games and
Yeah.
whatnot. And frankly, why
Honestly,
not?
Sabar is still holding on to that one toy he found at treasure hunt in our house.
Yeah.
It's there. It's very
But
much
it's true.
there.
It's again the competition. The children don't realize it. But again, as a parent, I feel it too. I feel it. I'm like, okay, my kids are going to these incredible birthday parties that are so generous in how lavish they are. And I've struggled with it. And then I was like, well, it's not me. So if it's not me, my child isn't demanding it. It's not who I am. It's not who my husband is. It's lavish enough what we do for our kids'
Yeah, I
birthdays.
was
By
going to
all
say,
standards,
yeah,
it's
yeah.
lavish
I
enough,
think-
but
yeah.
it's not at the same level.
It's not
that-
over the top.
It's not at the
I
same
think
level
it
of
comes
the
to the
birthdays they're
same
going
thing
to.
that Gloria was in the conversation with Gloria. We came up with that. Whose need is it
Whose
to
need
have
is it?
that?
Yeah.
Exactly.
Because that's the aspirational aspect Mrs. Adams is talking about. That parents are aspiration. They want to go into
perfect-
work and
yeah.
speak about, I'm planning this birthday party and we have this and we have this and we have this, and the child is not talking about it. The child is not even going to remember.
The child has no idea.
The child experiences none of what you experience. For the children, mucking about in a sandpit, kicking a ball in a park, doing the treasure hunt, pinning the tail on the donkey,
Is more fun.
splashing about with watercolors, just water balloons or whatever is so much more fun. But we stick these little hats on them. And what troubles me is another thing, is that they're 1-year-olds. They have no idea what's going on. And yet there are chocolate fountains and,
I mean, it's just unnecessary.
Barat ghars kind
It's
of
more for the
booked.
parents.
Yeah.
And I think
Yeah.
that's what you recognize. Because
That's
you're true. I want to give two very quick examples. One is I went to a birthday party, a school birthday party, and they're not Indian, they're European. So the birthday party was so different to what like my kids normally go to. It was in their apartment. They'd ordered some pizza, they'd bake some cookies at home, and the kids had a bunk bed, which was their only form of entertainment. By the end of it, there were no nannies invited. So either you came with the nanny or you came yourself. So I took my daughter without her nanny, of course. The children were on their own. No one was supervising them. There was no other adult in the room. They had converted one room into a dance disco with the lights off. The bunk bed was in a fortress. And honestly, they had the time of their lives. And that's what made me realize that, you don't need to overcompensate. Like,
No.
kids can have fun in the simplest environments. That's one example. I'll quickly give another. My sister in law is married to a Frenchman. So they also raising their children in a very, like, they've never had a camera in the kids' room. They've raised their kids with those old school, like, sound machines or whatever it is, or
Monitors.
monitors. And their daughter is 9 and 6 now. And when they come over to stay with us, my younger one is 4 now, so they all just chuck the adults out of the room. Door shut, no cameras, nothing, and they play all day long. They don't want a
Good for
nanny in
them.
the room, they don't want an adult in the room. And you realize that true play for them is unsupervised play. Just them, and their imagination runs wild in that room. And then when they get bored, they go out for a run, then they come back, they have a snack. And that's why I have become so much easier in terms of
Yeah.
like how I'm raising my kids, because I keep reminding myself of like how I'm seeing my sister-in-law do it and how her children are brave, incredibly independent,
Yeah.
And very
willing to take
kind.
risks,
Yeah.
very
And very
polite,
kind, very polite, very well mannered.
very well mannered.
Yeah.
I
And
think it's so interesting you bring up the point of kind because I was going to say something earlier, based on what Mrs. Adams said, that we're already in grade one talking about boats. Well, we are still preggers and we're talking about which school will our child go to as well.
But
We
Nanki,
are-
that's also because it's very hard.
Sure, exactly.
So
I agree.
that fear is there.
But again, it's the parents' anxiety, right? And when
Yeah.
we have identified, and nothing wrong with that. I think that's an aspect of aspiration which must be acknowledged. That, for example, a Shriram parent would want their child to go to Shriram, or a Shivnadar parent would want their child to go to Shivnadar, or everyone wants to go to those top 5 schools, etc. Right? What has happened is there is a certain element of gatekeeping that has come into who we want our children to hang out with. Yes.
Yes.
And yet we are trying to teach them what I call performative empathy and compassion, which you can never do.
Oh
Where
my, only you would call it performative.
where
empathy.
children are, because you are modeling for them anyway. So
Yeah.
if you are talking at home about not wanting your child to hang out with so and so because they don't speak good English, for example, or they even heard another child say it, or because they are of a certain color, or because it could be anything, they internalize that. So they don't necessarily go say it, and you will still teach your child you have to be good to everyone, you have to be kind to everyone. So that is the performative aspect of it, but children can only perform to
They emulate what they see at home.
they will end up acting it out. And I think this is a primary concern in primary school and then accentuates as you go into middle school. Because I think the reason for that is that the children are not being allowed to choose their friends. There is a fantasy, there's a fantasy aspect to I only want my child to hang out with.
PLU. People like us.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you for putting a term to
Cliquish.
it.
Oh
Yes.
my God.
Right? No, I absolutely agree with that. I remember growing up outside the house more than inside the house. And I was in Calcutta. That's where I was born. And it was a very diverse community. The other thing is, we don't live in diverse communities anymore.
Yeah.
We live in very select, circumscribed communities of PLUs. And diversity comes in by way of household families, the staff that we have in our households and their families. And do we encourage our children to play with staff family children? Is a question that you need to ask yourself. Are they invited to your child's birthday parties? Or is that something that is a no-go area? Children pick up on that, and then they realize that there is something that sets me apart. And that something is the way I speak, where I live. It is the quality of my life. It is how much money my parents make,
Yeah.
how big a car I have. And so that's the aspiration. Okay, so that's what matters. So clearly that matters.
That's the currency.
So that's So they themselves then are on that.
I'm so worried. You have no idea.
Yeah, I can see
Sorry.
it. It's reaching me, Gayeti.
So, example, another from my own past and my as a mother, when we came back from the UK, there anywhere Western, like you had mentioned your sister-in-law, um, it's much more egalitarian.
It is.
Yes, it is.
There is a dignity of labor that they recognize.
Yeah.
And the first question we ask people is, wo rehte kahan hai?
Mm.
So you immediately slot South Delhi,
Mhm.
West Delhi, North Delhi, East Delhi,
Absolutely.
number one. The next is, of course, which school they go to, etc. And we were here, and he was 7. We were still finding our way after having been away for a long time. And my husband had insisted on buying a really beat up 17-year-old ambassador because it was like the Morris Minor, and he wanted to drive it. So on Delhi roads, way back in the early 90s, he was driving this and having a blast. Loved it. And Sean just grew up thinking that the ambassador is the best thing since sliced bread.
Yeah.
So one day, and all his other friends had either imported cars or bigger cars of some sort of the other, whatever was
Fancy schmancy.
in the Indian market. And then one day we were driving along the flyover, I remember so distinctly. And he looked out and we all saw this Rolls Royce, purring past, sort of gliding with that beautiful silver
Yeah.
icon. And he said, Dad, what's that? He said, oh, that's just a rundown version of the ambassador. So he went,
Love it.
really? Oh, okay.
Love it.
And I love how he
And
believed
that's
his
it.
dad.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah.
And he has never had this
Aspiration.
aspiration for a car.
Wow, that
Yeah.
speaks to me.
He drove his tiny little i10, which he bought for the first time. He didn't change it for 11 years.
That's a long time.
It's
For
a
an
long time.
I-10. For an I-10, for
And
sure.
it lasted.
Yeah.
And you see, so because if we look, as you'd mentioned, they absorb what they see
Yeah.
around them. Children
100%.
absorb what they see around them much more than we give them credit for, and much more than we know how. And in a sense, the behavior we model, our relationships, how authentic we are, how genuine we are, that's the sanskar or the value that the child will have. And they're very discerning. So I would say the first thing that as parents is to really work on oneself. How can we be calm as you tried that method?
Yeah.
How can we be more present? How can we be happier
True.
with what we have? And his first, and I know I said I was going to talk about him, but his first lines as a 7-year-old essay at the school when he came back and he was
I read
told,
that in your book.
write about your
Yes.
family, was what did he pick up? He picked up, my nanny is very kind. She comes to my bus stop every day. My mother would go in the blazing sun to pick up her grandson. My mother works very hard and is very kind. My father is a happy person. Right? So I've written to say that, make of that what you will, but kindness and hard work. And being appreciated for effort. We never appreciate them for effort. We appreciate achievement.
True.
And then even that sometimes is not good enough.
True.
Just 14-year-olds crying, I got 80. My mother wanted to know why I didn't get 90. What does she want of me? That kind of disappointment. And when your children feel that they are never going to be like you, as such high achievers, children of parents who are high achievers have a difficult time.
Yeah.
Because even if the parents aren't consciously, you know, creating this cutout that they have to emulate, they always feel, I'm not going to be good enough. Again, back to a family example. My husband was a sports person. I was an actor and educator. Our son made it very clear he wanted neither of us at his football games nor his theater experiences because he didn't want to be judged.
Yes.
Okay. So it's you that hurts.
Yeah.
That really hurts you. And you think, why? But you have to just understand that that's where the child is right now. That's where he needs to be. And he will himself work it out and give that space and step back. And that's the hardest thing.
It is, and there's something else you see in your book which I think is so important because that made it was like eye-opening for me. And my brother said it to me first, way when I had my children. He said, your children are not an extension of you, and you say
Yeah.
exactly
Khalil
that
give
in
her
your
a hug.
book.
Yes. Yes.
They're their own people.
Yeah.
And I remember when he said it, my daughter had just been born, and I was like, of course she's not an extension of me, but you still want your children to look like you. You keep looking for your traits in them. This
right.
one's behaving like me. And like whenever people used to say she looks like my husband, I'd be like, no, she looks like me. And you are subconsciously doing that. So it took a lot of unlearning and respecting her for who she is and just recognizing that she's not me. Like, okay, yes, I carried her and my son, and yes, I birthed them, and yes, I have that connection, but they are their own people. And the moment you start like seeing from that lens, you start giving space to the fact that, okay, they don't want you in their space right now. They don't need you right now. They need to just vent. Or maybe you want them to go to a ballet class, but they hate it. And that's fine. You shouldn't be trying to live out your unfulfilled, I don't know, dreams.
Allow their personhood to emerge. Naturally.
And that takes a lot of recognition, and you bring that in that book with a very lovely
Yeah,
poem.
that
I
was
think
really
we'll put it
nice.
out for anyone to read as well, which really did speak to me. Like it did. It made me realize that, yes, you just have to understand that they're little people, and your job is just to let them flourish in whatever way.
You need to have, therefore, as an adult or as a parent, that strong sense of confidence in yourself.
True.
Because if you're fractured and unsure of what you believe in, then you will never be comfortable with the letting go.
Yes.
And letting go, both of you are going to have to let go after a bit.
I
And
mean, I
it's
already
tough.
need to sometimes because
Yeah,
my
I
daughter,
think
the
so.
things.
We don't co-sleep with our son.
But that is the paradox of motherhood.
But then see this letting go.
That you are birthing this part of you
Yes.
that to grow into an independent, autonomous, thinking for oneself human, hopefully that will be of some value to themselves and society. But actually, it's all about them and not about you,
right.
and it's hard.
That's right.
You know, so we don't co-sleep with our son. I'm not a big believer of co-sleeping. I've never been, and so it was one random Friday evening, and he said, "I really want to watch TV because we really ration his screen time." We said, "Okay, fine, come. You can watch TV in our room, and then if you'd like to sleep here." So he said, "Okay, okay." So he's done watching TV. At this point, my husband and I are asleep because we're tired from the day, and this dude is just laying back watching TV. Suddenly gets up and he says, "Guys, that's it. I need some space." And we're just looking at him. Said, "Can you please put me back in my tree house?" And we just looked at him. We said, "Okay, we'll take you back to your room." And in that moment, part of me was relieved because I was like, okay, I'll have some space to sleep properly. But literally, I think Sukrit and I were in tears that he said, "I need some space." And all of four, "How can you already want space from us?"
Yeah. Yeah.
What they tell you?
It broke my heart. I'm not even going to pretend to be cool about it. It broke my heart.
Oh, just wait, Ravneet. Wait till he's 14.
He will not want to be seen with you. You will not be able to hug him.
I already can't because I asked him, I said, is it okay if I give you a hug? I'm not ready yet, Mama.
I never asked. I took that as a right, but I was never forgiven because I hugged him once in public.
Oh, no, no.
Oh,
It's personal space.
that's right.
But again, you say something about that in your book that I do think parents will help parents understand. You say that neuroscientists have like studied the adolescent brain, adolescent. Sorry, I mispronounce this quite often. And one of the things that have sort of like emerged from that is that it is exactly what needs to happen. That pushback is what needs
Yeah.
to happen. And I think if parents recognize that, we would maybe be more okay with giving teenagers that space.
Gayeti, I hear you, and I absolutely agree. Because I thought about this, in fact, before coming, that pushback happens because the human brain, the adolescent brain, is evolving. It is trying to figure things out. It is
In transition.
in transition. It is low on things like self-regulation. It is high on things like
Risk-taking behavior.
risk-taking,
Impulsivity.
anxiety, mood swings, etc., etc. Friends, very high. Parental. There's a beautiful cartoon which I will send to all of you on the adolescent brain. I love it, and I've used it forever. But we couldn't get the copyright to use it in the book. And what sadly is happening now, that when they shut themselves out, unless they are hooked, and I pray that most young people are hooked onto sport, music, dance, the arts, something. But if the hook is only the algorithm, the device, then they are drawn into all kinds of darkness and dependencies, and that's the danger.
Like that TV show, Adolescence. I don't know if you've all seen it. It's exactly that. It's
Yeah.
about a teenager in
It's making headlines the world
the
over.
world over. Yeah.
But it is, that's why the need for catching them young when it comes to getting them hooked onto something.
Something.
You know, something that becomes a real,
Something outside of devices.
something outside
Screens.
and screens.
I agree.
I love the great outdoors, and I'm
I was
trying
just gonna
so
say that.
hard.
Yeah.
I'm trying so hard to, inculcate that in Sabar. Like he thinks, like in the evenings, he has to find something. We have a small kitchen garden. He has to find something there that he will take back to the kitchen and we eat it for dinner. And that's a habit that, we're really trying for our kids.
Take weekends, you're in a position to be able to do that. Take weekends away, outdoors, just get out.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
this whole phone thing at home is a bugbear. And even now, when my family, my son and daughter-in-law are both going to be hitting 40, I do not allow phones when we eat.
Yes.
Yeah.
You're coming to see me, you put your phone away.
Yes.
That's brilliant. Yeah.
And you
And-
need those rules in place from the
Yeah.
time we have
That's
it from, and like I had said in another conversation, my daughter responds really well to rules. Like if you try and
Yeah.
argue with her, you're not winning that argument. But if it's a rule, she very rarely will push back.
Because those are boundaries.
Those are just
Yeah.
Children
she
need
gets
boundaries.
it.
They understand them also. But I have a question here, and especially because your book gives the context, right? I'm very big on this Indian context, and I want to go back a little bit to the part where you were talking about only like you have to be regulated within, and you have to have the self confidence to let them go. Because that is a big part, perhaps, dare I say it, possibly the most important part of parenting, right? And I think in the Indian context, for a long time, especially when you're younger, you're almost not allowed to think for yourself. because everybody else around you has done the thinking for you, and it's like you have blinders on. The school we went to, we were only and only judged on how we performed in tests. We had a test every Monday.
Every Monday.
These weekends away, there were no weekends
There were
away.
no
Because
weekends.
our moms were like, you study and you get those marks.
Yeah.
And you're not allowed to bring less than a 23 out of a
This is
25.
insane.
Yeah, but we have done this for years.
And
But
the way I bonded with my friends over those telephone calls.
Nanki, but that's the silver lining. What I'm trying to tell you is
Yeah.
that this majority of the country, because of the cultural setting, has not been allowed to think for itself. And then to tell people in their mid 30s that, hey, like now you've produced a human being, you're looking after it, you need to have this self confidence and the maturity to know when to let go and when to step away. This person has no idea. So
You mean they haven't developed
yes,
psychologically in their
so I
minds
just
enough?
think that as parents, there's that one also has to take a step back, not only to understand what you can do for your children, but not everybody is understanding that they must look inwards first.
So I'm going to say something which is not popular.
Yeah.
And in fact, I would like to invite Mrs. Adams on that conversation because there is this huge flux of everybody suddenly going for therapy, which is both good and bad because everyone does not, I do not believe everyone needs therapy. Everyone needs support of some kind, but we are in such a digitized time that we are only thinking that therapy is the only form of support. There is no sense of connectedness amongst us and there is no sense of belongingness anymore. So there are wounds there. And that's why we're going to therapy. But when you both are talking about letting go, I think what you're really saying is, are parents conscious enough and tolerant enough to let their children develop on their own? That's what letting go really is, to problem
Yeah,
solve on their own,
yeah.
to develop those life skills. But if all the decisions are being made for the child in class 5, if we know that he's going to have to apply to Harvard and Yale and LSR also for that matter, that's insane. We are hijacking and corrupting that child's life. And then we also live in a country where
Ravneet and I are looking. But guys, we honestly have no choice. And you say this in your book as well, Miss Adams. It's a rat race. And
I'm sure.
we got our children like they've just joined nursery. It consumed our lives.
Yeah, it
for
was
2 years.
I don't even
I'm
want
going to say in a world of rat races, don't be a rat. Pick another animal.
then you're just
Then
left
what
at
do-
the
yeah, but
wayside.
it's-
And I think that's where I was really, listening to your experience of your own family, and it mirrored so much of my parents. I think I really want to acknowledge that in this moment where they were very simple people. My mom was also an educator who you knew well. And my father was in the army, and then he had to quit suddenly because my twin brother was diagnosed with certain medical conditions. So they had to be stationed in a neutral city where medical care was available. But they were just not part of the rat race. And I think a lot of that came from the great couplehood they shared. They were the bestest of friends.
Yeah.
And then having a child who developed hearing impairment, and special needs, I think it kind of created some sense of exclusion, but the confidence came from the partnership and the support amongst them. And my mom then getting into school psychology and kind of leading the way in that. I think they were just not interested in being rats. They were just not. And I think, Ravneet, you know that. You knew them, And I think there is something to say about that because the way you talked about yourself
They
and
were
Sean and your husband, it just sounded so familiar. And I was like, yeah.
I was thinking the same because I thought of your parents also.
Yeah.
I did.
And that's why I think I've grown up to be that. I'm just not a rat.
I know my husband calls me a sheep quite often. He's like, just stop being a sheep. 'Cause
Sorry, Eddie,
he's
we'll
not like
try.
that either.
Yeah, he's not.
He's not. Yeah.
If your child grows up, so I'll start with myself. I saw my mother work extremely hard. I saw my father work extremely hard. But it was a patriarchal setup. My father was authoritarian, very authoritative. And he and I just had the worst relationship that you can ever imagine. And we never really bridged that gap. But my mother was was my sort of soulmate, if you like. And growing up in an atmosphere where there is fear, that when my father comes back from work, my mother, who had worked an equally long day as principal of an institution in Kolkata, of Birla High, and a principal of a college as well, she would tippy-toe. We were all tippy-toeing. because he was the man of the house, right? And I didn't see why that should be the case. So, of course, I lashed out when it was time to lash out, and it didn't go down well. So, I found handling conflict as a teenager, because of the overbearing presence of my father and his rages, very difficult. I saw what it did to my mother. I saw that here was a woman who was chucking stones at the British, saying "Tori bacha hai hai," fighting for the, burning all the clothes, wearing khadi, running away to get married to my father, unconventional, firebrand, but completely destroyed by this patriarchal setup. And I swore to myself that a patriarchal setup is not something I can thrive in. But it damaged me. But when I say damaged, I got over it.
You
We-
recovered from
yeah.
it. You
We
did
all-
the work. You did the
Yeah.
work to
yeah,
recover.
I
from
mean,
it.
we all get damaged.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I could not have a difficult conversation with anybody. I was a people pleaser. Pour oil over. Oh, some anger. Quickly pour the oil. Let us not have any
That's
kind of.
connected to what you were saying.
Right.
You
Yeah.
can't think for yourself.
Can't
Yeah.
think. My husband was combative, loved a good argument. Really fancied, yeah, let's argue about this. Nothing, no argument. No argument. And he said, but you're passive aggressive. Do you realize that? So I think that when you're growing up as a person, you have to figure so much stuff yourself. And unless you're reflecting and thinking as an individual, and this book made me do that's why I'm fearful, that's why I'm anxious. And
It made you confront those parts of yourself.
that's right. So I didn't go to a therapist, but it happened
Organically.
organically, and the book was in a sense therapy for me, as were my friends. And I urge all parents, and all young parents especially, to place the emphasis on your own sense of well-being, that what makes you happier,
Yeah.
not material stuff. Don't defer happiness. I'll be happy when I get this. I'll be happy,
happy.
when.
No.
Try and be happy now if you can. Try and work at it, because it takes working.
It does.
If you've always lived in the future and never in the present, it's a hard thing. So people tell you, I'm now mindful. Doesn't work like that. Mindfulness took a long time for me. I'm
Yeah,
72.
it doesn't come automatically.
No,
You
it
don't
doesn't.
wake
Wake
up
up
one
one
day
day
and
and
you're
you're
like,
like,
You
okay,
get
I'm
mindful.
and you have to work on being happy. Being
I
happy
agree.
also.
Buzzword.
Yeah.
You have just got to work on it every day and know that what matters at the end of the day is the love that binds you all in a family, and that with your child is unconditional, but with very clear boundaries. And my boundary was, I will not accept disrespect. Don't come home for dinner, don't let me know, play truant, blah, 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 not a problem. But address me with respect. Or else, sunshine,
Yeah.
I'm pushing back.
I think that is so meaningful.
Right? So that's one.
Yeah.
But that connection has to be
Yes.
developed. And that connection is only developed through communication, where the other knows that she sees me.
Yeah.
She sees me
That's a
for what I
feeling.
am.
Yeah.
She's not seeing me through a judging lens. She's not seeing me through
100
I'm
out
di-
of 100.
I'm disappointed. She's not seeing me through my report card. She sees me. And if she sees, as I do, that I'm kind, I'm great with kids, I love animals, I'm gentle, I have a wacky sense of humor, I think I've done my job.
Definitely. But that's a hard reality that's to sink, like for that to sink in, when
Look, I'm 72, and it's taken me 50 odd years, right?
I know. That's reassuring for us while we're sitting
You
here
don't
still
have
trying.
to let it take that much time, is what
Yeah.
I'm trying to say.
True.
You know, my pediatrician said this to me. So Sabr was a preterm baby, and my anxiety was, of course, peaking at that point. And him putting on weight was critical, right? So I went back in for my second or third appointment, and I was like, "Oh, this is happening, and this is happening, and look, I've ticked all of these things. You told me to make a note, and I went back with so many papers. He was just looking at me, and I said, "But now I'm not lactating enough. Now I'll have to put him in formula." I was having a full meltdown, and this is despite being married to a doctor where I know all the facts and I have somebody hand holding me at home. But here I am in my pediatrician's office, like crying. I said, "I don't know what else can I do." So he just looked at me and said, "Please remember that he is not going to remember how perfectly you measured everything and how perfectly you put these together. He's just going to remember how you were feeling in the moments that you did this." And I think that for me was it was a very defining moment as a mother, because he just looked at me and said, "Ravneet, a happy mom is any day much better than a perfect mom, because that's the only
100%.
thing your kid will
Good
remember."
enough.
Yeah.
Good enough. Winnicott talks about it.
Yeah.
As I've
No,
talked
and I
about.
think definitely that's something that Nanki had told us right at the
Yeah.
beginning when we said we wanted to start this podcast. She said, just stop trying to be the perfect parent. Be the good enough parent. And that's kind of like our mantra going into
Yeah.
this podcast
Yeah.
as
Be
well.
the I'm there for you.
I'm
parent.
there for you.
Just show up.
Presence,
I think you just have to
presence.
show up, right?
I have a beautiful piece of writing, which I do not know. Maybe I'll share it offline, or I'm happy to share it right now because I brought it with me. I can't remember whether it's in the book. I don't think it is. There's this feminist activist called Glennon Doyle, and it's a shout out to moms. And it's called Memo to Parents. And she says how when we leave the hospital or wherever we've had the baby, we get a memo. And for our grandmothers, the memo was, here is your child, take her home, love her. That's it,
That's it.
right? Our mother's memo was, here is your child, take her home, love her, call all your friends over, play cards, have a drink, lock them outside,
They'll grow up.
and bring them in only when it's time to eat.
True.
But the memo that parents have received is so wacky. I won't remember all of it. But it just says, here is your child. She is the most precious object you have ever held in your hand. She is the reason that you exist.
Oh my God.
She is the reason for you to be. All her achievements are your achievements. She has to win at everything. She has to be top of her grade. Do not let a drop of rain fall on her head. Your whole purpose is to make her happy and comfortable all the time. She must know no pain. And if you haven't done that, then you haven't done your duty. Here is your child. Make sure she does what you want her to do 24 hours a day. You have no life. Parenting or being a parent is not a noun, it's a verb. And so she continues. And she said, this sucks.
This calls for another episode. Is what I was
The
gonna
therapist
say.
in Nanki was going to
I'm
cry
just
right now.
like, wow.
Yeah. Because we were given such a rotten memo, which has made us neurotic. And ours is we're parenting a generation that are overparented and underprotected.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
I think that's
The Anxious
profound.
Generation, a book that's been published, talks about it.
Hate.
Yeah, he's
Yeah.
so good. He's absolutely.
He's
I refer
brilliant.
to them as well.
He's brilliant.
He's talking about we are over-parenting them in the real world and under-parenting them in the virtual world. Because also you're also modeling it, right? You are also on Instagram 24/7, so that's normalized. So yeah.
So it's a call out to mothers to say, let's change this memo. Here is your child.
And I think also
Take her
that your
home.
child is not your
Love her.
job.
Love
Like,
Be there.
like,
Yes.
Yeah.
just be there. He's not your job.
Not your job. He comes with his or her own destiny.
So I have to say that we're a little bit lucky because we have a small little group of friends. And what we've done is that we've shown up at each other's houses saying, leave the kids at home. We are going out. We're not going to do every single thing with them each time. And if someone's having a rough time, or if someone is just not had the best week, or if someone's just had another baby and they can't go out, we've just shown up at their doorstep at 10 p.m. and been like, okay, green tea or tequila, which one is it going to be? And we've done it. And I think we're very lucky that we have this community and we've shown up for each other in that way. And we're trying to learn from each other. I learn a lot from Gayeti.
And likewise,
She
I think
really
we
helps
all do
give
sort of hold a
perspective.
mirror to each
Yeah.
other. And I think that's like the role like your mum community does play. Because sometimes you're being crazy, you need somebody to call you out and be like,
Stop
"Look,
it.
you're being
Just
crazy.
stop it.
Your
That
child is
so,
fine."
so
I think it's
useful.
so
Need
good
that.
because you talk about competitive parenting. And that
Competitive
is one of the
parenting.
root causes of all problems. Like you're just constantly competing, and then
Yeah.
child also is automatically.
And you're right,
competing.
social media is a big cause of that. So sometimes, like you have done things a certain way and you see someone do it another way, and that doubt creeps into your head and you're like, oh, should I have also just done this? Should I have sent her for that class? Should I have done the birthday party
many
like that? But
options.
then you reckon with yourself and be like, no.
The options are there, Ravneet, but it's our choice whether we take them.
Yeah.
Why do we even look?
Agreed. Yeah.
Why do we
Yeah,
even
I
look?
know of a young mom who is raising her child. She didn't even keep a nanny. She's like,
Yeah.
these 3 years, she's like, it's not like I can't afford one. She's doing very well. And she's got a lovely daughter and she's very well socialized with mom, with dad. She's got this amazing dog. I think she'll know who I'm talking about. And she goes to the park with her and she's loving it. And she's like, it's not like I don't work. I work. Like I have chosen to work only an hour.
But that's a real privilege. You know
yeah,
what
yeah.
I
I
mean?
don't think a lot of people don't have that kind of privilege.
Yes.
Like, and even in a sense of privilege, like we just spoke about couplehood. Now,
I won't say it's entirely a privilege. I do think it's a choice. She's choosing to be that.
what do you
I-
mean?
In the sense that she can keep a nanny. But for those first 3 years, she's choosing not
But
to.
that's
she
a
doesn't
privilege.
need to work.
She doesn't need to work.
Yeah, she doesn't need to
Financially,
be at
there is
work
no-
financially.
okay.
Right?
That's a privilege.
That's
Sure.
it.
It's a
Yeah.
choice you're making with your privilege, right? But not to take away from this, but I also want to focus on a lot of people losing couplehood when they become parents and forgetting about that aspect of your life. And it was so nicely brought out by you, especially in the letter that your son wrote, right? That my dad is just happy and my mom is kind and she just works hard.
My mom
And
works
also
hard.
your couplehood was just rock solid. And like when we've seen these kind of examples around us, I think it's it's very grounding for the child also. And a lot of parents tend to forget that you're working on yourself, you're working on the child, you kind of forget about your marriage
I
sometimes.
think the energy that the two parents exhibit
Yeah.
is what the child ends up internalizing and becomes their energy, if I may.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
you know.
I
But
do
that
agree
said,
with
everyone,
that.
like I'm a product of a separated home.
Yeah.
And I mean, like I always give this example that if I could turn back time and someone asked me, do you want your parents should your parents have remained together? Of course. But for the two of them, it was way better for them
Yeah.
to be apart. And so I always want to like flag it out to the single moms or the single dads who are really doing an
Yeah.
incredible job on their
Yeah.
own. But at the same time, like I remember reading, and that probably played a role. My parents' divorce played a role in the kind of partner I chose because
Yes.
I chose somebody who was very black and white in his love for me, because my parents didn't have that. For me, I was attracted to that in my partner. Like just this, like no matter what, he's there.
Yeah.
That sense of like just being able to take him for granted, which isn't a great thing, but I can. He's that kind of a person. And I read somewhere because you tend to prioritize your kids so much that yes, the best thing you can do for your children is to also have a happy
Yes.
Yeah.
marriage. It's such a big
It's the
investment.
greatest service you can do.
But
Yeah.
not
Good
at
to
the
each
cost
other.
of your own I mean, not everyone can have a happy
Yeah,
marriage, and I
yeah.
think it's important to recognize that. But
Yes.
yes, you have to work on
Yes.
your
And it's the
marriage.
smaller things that, if we're all arguing about the last piece of chocolate, Sukrit will say to Sabar that, hey, I'm going to give this to Mama because you've had your turn and I've had, and she's not had it, and she has to have it. So he says these small things to him where he's like, okay, now, and then he gets a little bit jealous. And I'm secretly feeling so thrilled.
But that's healthy. That's
Yeah.
psychologically healthy
Yeah,
for
he gets a
him
little
to
bit jealous that,
witness.
oh my God, dad is just like only giving her attention. What about me? Literally, I wanted him to pass something to me. I said, darling, can you give that to me? And Sabar turns around and he says, but you called me darling. Why did you say it to Papa?
So
And I was like, I'm so
sweet.
sorry. In that moment, I was so
On
taken
that
aback, I
note,
didn't know what
since
to
we know
say.
Sukrit is Mrs. Adams' student,
Yeah.
As an educator, as a teacher, I think you can speak for a lot of teachers out there. Anything on the teacher's experience of children and how they are managing their anxiety in the classrooms? Because I mean, I worked in a school and I saw a lot of it. And it's not a very open space to be speaking about a teacher's anxiety. So I'm really bringing in a very new theme, and it was not until I attended a memoir workshop actually, where we're going to have her on the episode as well, where a prompt was given and it was something about school. And it's so profound that I learned over there that even teachers can pass on intergenerational themes. Like, what was done to
Yeah.
them gets normalized, and then you kind of do it to children. And we've seen the huge transition in calling out hitting behavior, etc., by teachers, right? So as an educator, the anxieties that you carry into your classrooms, both personally and of course professionally.
Good question, Nanki. Again, I wish I had the photographic memory that I used to have. There's a very powerful quotation. I can't even remember by whom, but I'll send it to you, which talks about the power of a teacher.
Yeah.
And we used to make sure that in school, when teachers joined as part of orientation, and indeed as a kind of a touch point occasion, regularly, that they understood the power they had to make or break a child.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So you have the power to,
Shape them.
to be able to see them
Yeah.
and sense and understand, analyze and not diagnose, but analyze what's going on with the child. You have the pulse of the child. You also have the power to break that child emotionally, but you have so much power to build that child. And it's really tough when, as an individual, particularly now, when teaching is not seen as a vocation
Yeah.
anymore, you come from an environment where there are concerns, financial, family concerns, issues with relationships or whatever, but you have to leave all that behind. In high-end schools, we see that very often teachers are coming from economic backgrounds that don't match the wealth of the children and the parents.
Yes.
The children see that and they pick up on it. There was one teacher who just broke down at my table and said, "Ma'am, I get into the bus, my stomach starts to heave because I know they're going to pick on my accent and the clothes that I wear."
Exactly.
Okay? And yet we are expecting as a school and as parents that this teacher will be the ultimate protective layer for our child. So it's hard, and it requires a great deal of understanding, sensitivity, and empathy on the part of the management, and on the part of parents.
Yeah.
I think when COVID struck, and parents had to deal with their children at home,
Yes.
it was then that the penny dropped.
Eye-opening.
My God, I only have the one or two, but this woman who's showing up online every day, or this man, manages 30, 40, maybe more. And there was a slight sense of respect. Teachers do an incredible job. And teachers have that opportunity to save the child from slipping through the cracks
100%.
Yeah.
by picking up on things. And to do that in spite of your own personal, turmoils
Adversity or yeah.
and adversity is so creditable. So I have nothing but admiration
I agree.
and absolute gratitude to my
100%.
teaching community.
And
I
I
think-
have
Absolutely.
I have a recent example. So 6 months ago, Sabar's class teacher, she said that his pickler grip isn't good enough. So can you do X, Y, Z things at home? Can we give you some worksheets? I said, of course, happy to do it. And I worked with them, and it really improved. And one day she just looked at me and she said, Mrs. Sethi, thank you so much. So I looked at her, I said, ma'am, why are you saying thank you to me? I should be thanking you for taking this extra interest in my child, for flagging something that will help him later, because lots of writing starts, right, in kindergarten. So I said, you're helping me so that he is not going to struggle later. So I should be thanking you. Why would you thank me? I was very puzzled. She says, no, you don't understand. Parents are not as cooperative as you. They don't take it. I said, but what's the big deal? He was not holding the crayon right.
The parent thinks it's your job.
I think there's a certain entitlement.
Yeah, but I was
With
Nanki,
which
I was
that
blown away
parents and
when she
families
said thank you
approach-
to me, and I was like, I can't. I said I should be thanking you out of this like 20, 22 children. You've taken out the time. They've handmade his worksheets and given them to me, and it really helped us.
And I mean, I was not a teacher, but I was a counselor. But I would see teachers, I think I personally have a huge amount of respect for
Yeah, of
teachers. Not to
course.
say they don't get things wrong, of course, but they're just
a
so
lot of
burnt
effort.
out. It is one of the most undervalued, underpaid professions, and yet they show up, leaving their
Every
children,
day.
their families
Yeah.
every day. For your children, they also, excuse my language, but take shit from the children in class. I was a very rowdy teenager.
I remember. I remember.
Like I really trouble them, but most of the high school teachers, they have those skills to really
Handle.
okay, you be rowdy, I'll be rowdy with you. I was punished every day, but I would still manage my academics, so it was fine. So I think that's why I brought in the teacher's mental health bit. And on that note, I want to bring in something very close to me, which is the special education bit. Yes, because it is close to me because I grew up with a brother who did have hearing impairment, and my mom is known in the field for her short, because she started late and unfortunately passed, but yet very well known work in special needs and mainstreaming children with needs into schools, which is about inclusion. Of course, inclusion does not only talk about special needs, but the reason I bring it into the conversation is that I was very happy that you have included it in the book because they're the often shoved away set of children and parents and families in schools, shoved away literally and metaphorically, if you know what I mean.
I do.
Because it's an uncomfortable conversation. People don't want to talk about it. People don't want to talk about it, maybe because they don't know how to talk about it. And I'm always willing to help them learn a little bit more. So I hope that you can shed some light on that. Your experience of writing it, why you wrote it, maybe. Yeah.
Okay. So I don't see how I could have written a book about parenting and children and education and teachers and educators without ensuring that there was space devoted to parents and children who had different needs. For me, that's a given. And it's one of the first points that I made to the publishers. I said, there will be a chapter
The
because
first point I made to them as well
Yeah,
was
yeah.
I
In
will
how
do
we
this
would do it with
podcast
our
if we do an
teams.
episode
Yeah.
on special needs.
100%.
that's
Yeah.
right. So I've always worked in institutions that have attempted to be inclusive, and I'm proud to be part of institutions that have pioneered the inclusivity, that have welcomed diversity. As somebody said, I think it was Gloria, or I forget who, that, you know, we have gender studies, we have media studies, we have citizenship studies, but we don't have diversity studies
Absolutely.
in our schools. And I write in the book about one class that I took. I forget what the topic was, what I was teaching. It was senior students. And I asked them how many of them had experienced um, being close to, as part of a family or as a friend, a child with a different
It's in the
ability.
book.
And first there was a silence. And then very slowly one hand came up, and then another, and then another, and then another. I did this because I saw when parents came for admission, it would just break my heart. I would want to, I would weep after they left because I couldn't weep with them there. It was always the mother who felt that this is my fault. The mother would sit there quietly crying, and the father would be fumbling, seeking admission for a child. This is their right. Why should there be a need for them to be supplicants? And that used to fill me with so much distress. So that's why it's in the book. I felt that the enormously challenging, courageous, and the heroic journeys that parents and children with different abilities take had to be put down. So it's not a very long chapter, but it's a short chapter that has the narratives of parents and their children and some of the amazingly good work that is being done now,
I saw.
which gives hope.
For sure.
I have to say that some schools, and I'm going to actually name St. Mary's,
Yes, I'm aware.
right? Their approach to inclusion and the way they, it's not as if we're doing something so valuable.
They just do it.
We are doing something that's right.
Yes.
Can it be any other way? And that equity, that sense of equity and access that they give, which percolates through the whole school, through their parents, through their teachers, to their students, that if a child, they don't have lifts. The child's in a wheelchair, needs to go to a class on the first floor. There are kids who do it.
Yes. I think it's the ethos of the school.
It's
I am
the
aware,
ethos of
Mrs.
the
Annie Koshi.
That's right.
I'm aware.
So I think that's absolutely, everybody should replicate that.
Yes.
And it is soul destroying and sad indictment of our humanity that it's not replicated. That
agree.
schools are shutting down these facilities to address the needs of children who need them.
Yeah.
They're either trimming it or shutting it down or
It's on paper.
just saying it's
Yeah.
They can do a lot more, is what I would say.
so much more. Every single private school in this country
100%.
needs to see it as their inherent responsibility to the nation to do this.
Thank you for bringing that in because, yes, it echoes what mom used to say. And I know that there was some interaction even when SBS was setting up. And
Yes.
I think she got really lucky when she met, really big shout out to Gauri Ishwaran,
Yes.
one of my favorite people.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
she was just, I mean, it was a given when she moved to Sanskriti, and there was no building over there. I don't know what has happened since, but it was just pity you're going to be setting up the center, and no child was taken in without, of course, the counselor in the room. And then there was this and she used to always, it was with pride, the learning center is and always will be the heart of the school.
Yeah.
And I think there's something to say about the leadership there, because if she didn't have that shoulder, then she wouldn't have been able to set it up. And I mean, subsequently, she won a national award for it, which she didn't consider anything, but I do. But yeah, she won a national award for the integration model
That's right.
that she came up with. And I believe SBS also took a little bit from it or studied it in some way. And yeah, it's my heart is with each and every family with special needs, and I'm always willing to, I should say, do the social emotional work with them. I hope to have one of the families in an episode here.
Yeah.
And
Because for us too, it's like a big learning experience. Oops. No, because that's one of the key things, like you said, there's a segregation, right?
Yes.
We're not all in the same classrooms. And
They're also invisible.
invisible.
they're
Yeah.
just invisible.
Yeah.
So in
everywhere,
fact,
everywhere.
for us, this conversation, like, I mean, I was
It's
honestly almost
eye-opening,
tearing
yeah.
up at the conversation because it suddenly humanized it for me. It put
Yeah.
like it in context, but it just doesn't come up in our day to day because the schools just
Which is heartbreaking in its own way
Yeah.
that it doesn't
I
come
guess
up.
it
Yeah.
doesn't come up because it won't till it happens to you, till it's
Yeah.
close to you, or if you have unless you have an educator like.
yeah.
If you travel
Yes.
and live overseas for a while, you will see that there will be differently abled adults
Absolutely.
Yes.
who are at the helm of checkout counters,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
who are
100%.
helping
All
you
the
do
time,
this,
yes.
who are do. So they're visible. They're in society. It's like women used to be at
Yeah.
a time, and old people, invisible. We have made atypical children and adults invisible.
Invisible.
And when they are visible, they are the center of so much unwarranted
Yeah.
attention.
Pity. It's not
And-
compassion.
It's also, it's pity. It's, I don't understand this.
Yeah.
I'm scared by this. All of these things. And it's so wrong. There is no place. And we tried so hard to find a place where children with different abilities as young adults could hang out. Look,
Yeah.
everybody needs acceptance.
Yeah.
If we don't feel accepted, we're not acknowledged. We may as well not be.
So I have a question for you. As a child and adolescent psychotherapist who works very closely with children, adolescents, what advice, based on your experience with both interacting with them, educating them, mothering one, would you like to give to me to keep in mind when I work with children, adolescents, and families
Oh, that's a hard one.
in the age of anxiety in India?
That's a hard one. Okay. It's the age group that I thrive on.
High five.
I've never been able to be fully comfortable with the little ones. They actually scare me. But put me with 14 to 18-year-olds, I'm happy. And I've always taught older students at university as well. So, what is amazing is the fact that they're in the midst of this whole evolutionary process in their heads. And I find that I find that so full of hope and potential and optimism, that there's all this to come, that they are mining themselves to be their better selves,
Yes.
right? So encouragement, definitely. But they also respect boundaries, and frankness.
That's why they possibly connect to me as a therapist. I'm too frank.
I think so, because your frankness is not judgmental, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Judgment is their worst enemy.
Yeah.
And it's anyone's.
Anyone's.
And if they know you're not judging them, if they know that there is empathy and that you see them, you hear them, they will, be there for you to beyond and back.
So true. Yeah.
And they're extraordinary in the reservoir that they can tap into if led by the hand in the right way, because their inner reserves, which they haven't discovered yet, and I talk about this because of the whole COVID experience. I spoke to about 150 adolescents as part of the adolescents and parents as part of as part of my research of the book, which is narrative and tells the stories of different people. And the book took 4 years almost to write, and COVID came in between. So after having talked to them pre-COVID and during COVID, post-COVID, I contacted some same groups again to find out where they were. And what struck me was, and I quote this passage from Mr. Navtej Sarna's book, which talks about how this was the generation of teenagers who were mired in electronics and devices, and we all thought were the pits. That through COVID, they discovered how they could use technology to help others.
Yeah.
They discovered compassion. They discovered organizational skills. They were out there helping. And it was like a rude wake-up call. They suddenly had to grow up.
Yeah.
Some did and some didn't. Everybody didn't grow up.
True.
Some have remained broken. And I think that it's just, okay, back to what I said earlier, this is the age group before they're truly adults, when there's so much promise.
Hope. And life.
And life.
On
Thank you.
that note, should we just do a little quick rapid fire, like 1 or 2, 3 questions? All right, one easy one. A book every parent should read apart from yours, of course.
Haim Ginott. Very old. Haim Ginnott. Particularly on adolescence.
Okay, Ravneet. Before our kids are teenagers, let's make sure we read that one.
Yeah, I was just thinking that how soon can we read
Okay,
this?
this is a good question, because I feel like this is what we always struggle with. What's worse for kids? Too many rules or too much freedom?
I think too many rules.
Too many rules.
And if you have given your child a sense of right and wrong, if you have modeled it and the child has seen it and understands that hurting someone is wrong, not caring is wrong, etc., etc., freedom
Yeah.
is there for them to, soar.
One change you'd love to see in Indian parenting culture.
Good one.
This is a
That's
good
a
way
good
to end.
one.
Good way to end, Gayeti.
Your children are not your children.
So true.
They are the voice of the universe expressing itself through you. Stop focusing on your children as it is something that you have achieved. They're not there to fulfill you.
One educational trend you're totally over that needs to change or go away.
Non-inclusive schools.
And let's end on this one. What's one phrase you wish parents would say more often to their kids?
Other than I love you, which Indian parents don't do, by the way.
Don't do, yeah.
We find it difficult to express our feelings by using the word love.
Yeah.
We don't even say it to each other as adults.
True.
Okay? And we think perhaps it's a Western concept. my father didn't tell my mother he loved her ever, and vice versa.
Yes.
So maybe it's just me having a different trajectory. I would so wish that they would be vulnerable
Yeah.
and share their feelings. And whilst being adults, be vulnerable. That this is me. There is goodness, there is some badness, not by intent, but it happens. I fall short on this.
Yeah.
I struggle with this. I think children need to understand that parents are not perfect and that parents will make mistakes. And it's okay to make mistakes. And there is a myth that all families have to be happy all the time.
Yeah.
True.
Yeah.
So I think just those things to be busted, really.
Well, thank you. Because honestly, there were moments in this conversation. I mean, I'm loving this podcast because for me, like, there are moments in these conversations, and probably because as a parent, like, this is just an unfiltered space to learn. And of course, I felt like I was learning a lot through a lot of what you were saying, and also through your book, which I think, honestly, any parent should read. It's been, I was like, yes, 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 yes.
Underline it 3 times.
Underline,
That's
underline.
still
Star,
not
star,
enough.
star, star, star. Let me take a photo and send this to someone who needs to hear this today.
I was quite amazed about that. The fact that people had annotated it and then came to see me with these annotations. That scared me. Don't take me
I have them
seriously.
here,
I
by
don't
the
take
way.
myself seriously. Please don't take me seriously. But thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
But thank you so
Ravneet.
much for making the time.
Not at all. Gayeti and Nanki.
Thank you for saying yes.
Yes.
It has been
Thank you for insisting.
I also want to let everyone know that I'm less anxious as a parent through these conversations. So
Oh,
thank you
yeah.
for that.
So we're
I
doing
mean,
something
without
right.
this, I think
Yeah.
the anxiety was there, and now, like, every conversation,
I feel a
The
lot
anxiety
better
is a little
about
less.
parenting.
yes,
It doesn't
takes the
feel
pressure
as overwhelming as, like I said, all those options, all those things in front of you.
Yeah.
And
Put blinders
no,
on.
and the reassurance of being a good enough parent and just showing up as yourself with authenticity. If that's what it takes to be a good role model, then it's both, right? It's not asking for a lot, but it's the world if you
Yeah.
can give it to your child. And that realization is only thanks to people like you who agree to speak to us.
Not at all.
And also wrote a book like this, which is, I think, so meaning. I am
Yeah.
again going to repeat it, that it's so meaningful that you're not a psychologist writing it, and you are an educator writing it, because
And a parent.
Yeah,
And a
and a
parent.
parent, yes, and a parent as well as a child, the child in you,
Yeah.
right? You
Yeah.
also spoke
Yeah.
about your experience
Yeah.
of being parented, because the two are not isolated. There is a thread there, and if this book can get people to reflect on that thread, then I think it's already doing its job. And yes, and
Thank you.
thank you. I'm so
Thank you.
happy you were here and this conversation happened.
And thank you for the coffee.